Have you seen?
Okay. Oh, well,
Okay.
I should have noticed that earlier.
Well, I didn't notice it till you looked.
See, it needs to be bigger so that you guys
I'm
notice it.
on a power trip, so.
Ginormous one.
Thank you. Oh, this is the big one.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
noisy crowd.
Good evening. I would like to call to order this May 22nd, 2019 regular board meeting of the Pullman School District. We'll begin as we always do with a flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our next item of business is the approval of the agenda. Superintendent Maxwell, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, there are changes to tonight's agenda. There are 3 additions to the agenda to make you aware of last minute. Warrants, transfer requests, additional summer activity, which is cheer. Also, under informational items, number D and E, 3240 and 3241. Please ignore those. We're going to delete those and come back to them at a later date. And those are just informational procedures. We have policies in place, but with the most recent changes, there have been some updates, so we need to eliminate those from the packet. We'll come back with those in the future. So 3240 and 3241 procedures both.
I move approval of the agenda with the amendments.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll move on to reports, correspondence, and program. It does not appear there is a PHS-ASB representative here.
Do not see Mandy.
Okay, so let's move on to board reports, and we'll begin with Director Roberts.
Nothing too much tonight. I just wanted to say that we just finished up another communications advisory committee right before the board meeting, and I just wanted to thank all the committee members and just say that we're making good work and good progress.
All right, thank you. Director Everman?
I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Matthews and the FFA chapter here at Pullman High. They did very well at the convention here in Pullman. Kudos to Mr. Matthews.
Thank you. Director Tammy?
Well, today I had the privilege of being the ribbon cutter for the Sunnyside Tri-Cities for the 4th grade. It was really cool. There was lots of really neat little stores going on with services offered, like hair braiding and nail polish painting and face painting, as well as lots of little crafts to pick up. So that was really fun. Classroom City. It was the first time that I had ever been, so I was really impressed with the students and their stores. It was very cool.
All right, thank you. Yes, I was disappointed that but while you were attending Sunnyside Cities, I was at the Jefferson's Assembly recognizing their designation as a green school, Washington Green School, and it was a great assembly with lots of people from the city and the district there, and really happy to see the PTA leader who's been leading the green team received herself individually a green medal from Washington Green Schools, which I thought was very nice. She's worked very persistently to get this designation, so it was very exciting. Superintendent's report.
Great. Well, you took care of my green team, so that was very nice to see it Jefferson today. So great award. I want to point out a couple of things tonight. One is if you have not seen U.S. News World Report, Pullman High School has been named the 27th best high school in Washington State. They've redone their criteria somewhat. I'm still reading through all of that. They also rank 1,550 nationally. What that involves now is At least, students take at least one AP exam. 48% of our students have taken at least one AP exam. 35% of them have passed at least one AP exam. Math proficiency rate is 55%. Reading proficiency rate is 69%, and graduation rate is 95%. We also rank very high in the college curriculum area as well. So I encourage you to check that out. So most of the high schools above us are Bellevue, Seattle, Highline, Lake Washington. Not really surprises, but we still do very, very well, and so I think that's something to celebrate. And I know the teachers work extremely hard, and I appreciate the community and parent support.
Hitting above our weight here,
Yeah. Along with that, we received news from the State Board of Education. They have a new state school recognition system. I'm still working on the algorithm they used here, but two of our schools have qualified. Franklin Elementary for high achievement on English language arts and math, and Lincoln Middle School closing gaps and demonstrating improvement among student groups. And I know you're aware that that's been a couple of year process and program that we've been working on at Lincoln Middle School to close some of those gaps that have been identified in their strategic plan. And it's really nice to see that that's been validated as being successful. So I really appreciate the Lincoln Middle School staff and Tammy's leadership and Cameron's leadership in making that happen. So only 200 schools are honored, and we are 2 of the 200. So just June, we'll be sending up a little group delegation to the award ceremony.
Good.
So we'll get that out, both of those out. I know Shannon's working on communicating those out on all of our mediums. Also, just to let you know, I know Chris Franklin has talked to the board previously about the GSL and GNL potential merger for our athletics. There's now a meeting next week, May 28th. I'll be attending with Justin and Chris to have another conversation about combining 2A, 3A, and 4A, or just a combined 3A, 4A with 2As isolated as their own. So I know Chris has given the board quite an overview of that process. Now they're calling in not only athletic directors, but also superintendents to continue this conversation. So I will keep you updated. There's two groups. And so nothing will be decided next Tuesday, but we're having further conversation on the pros and cons of combining and what that will mean for our program. And last, I will pass along a card to you. The 2019 Eastern Washington Legislative Tour is being scheduled for September 15th through the 17th in Clarkston. They've requested that I attend and be part of this Eastern Washington Legislative Tour. Idaho's been doing something similar. This is on a much grander scale, but I'll pass that along if you are interested. There is a email address that you can contact them if you're interested in attending. I have not seen the schedule yet or what that entails, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to program reports. Our first report tonight is on mental health and behavioral supports presented by Director of Special Services, Megan Itani. Welcome, thank you.
Good evening, you guys. I came tonight to give you an update. I know it says mental health and behavior supports, but I think what we're really wanting to talk about is social emotional learning. It's really an important area for everyone, but especially students today. When we talk about social emotional learning, we're really talking about several domains within that. So the other thing I brought tonight was just a quick example of definition, and this comes out of OSPI's Task Force for Social Emotional Learning. Social emotional learning is broadly understood as a process through which people build awareness and skills in managing emotions, setting goals, establishing relationships, and making responsible decisions that support success in school and in life. So when we talk even about social emotional learning, it's definitely even broader than just thinking about emotions or helping kids manage emotions. So it's important, I wanted to share this slide with you, that as I share with you what we're doing in our district, you're able to identify possibly what area, those kind of fit into.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Deb.
Mr. Winchell. So, go ahead and flip forward. Well, hold on, Ryan. Oh, a clicker. What I think is also important that I want to point out here is that we all recognize classrooms are definitely a center for social emotional learning, but as well with the whole school community, that's really important of school culture, as well as then homes and communities or family and community partnerships. We know that social emotional learning for our young people today, it's really important that we all collaborate, use similar language, especially for our students that might need more support in that area, that we're talking the same way, that we might have similar expectation for those students. So tonight I hope to show you guys examples of what we've done at the school levels, district level, and then classroom levels. Oh, Ryan. So most of this I'm going to talk through because that's a big grid. Those are all the different curriculums, supports, main areas of focus that our staff have to go to or they're able to go to for support around social emotional learning. It's not going to list everything, and here's an example. I looked down at my desk and I looked at my recent Amazon purchase, and it was like, 10 ways to teach mindfulness skills to kids who have trouble sitting still. We know that mindfulness is something we hear a lot, I think everywhere in our society. Mindfulness and growth mindset are a huge component of social emotional learning. And so hopefully through other principals reports, through examples of our district, through our cultural steps we've taken this year, those are growth mindsets. That's one of the most important examples that we can show students around social emotional learning. Believe in yourself, and we can be successful together. So there's tons of little things on top of these big items that we're talking about tonight. When you look at the chart, you can see that I include preschool. You guys know we actually serve birth to 21-age students, birth to 5 for some of our most at-risk students. But preschool, they use the second step early childhood preschool curriculum. And I've actually worked collaboratively with all of our early learning centers. So our child care centers, WSU's been represented there, and they all have started using second step early childhood. It's been vetted for preschool age students, but it also connects with what we're doing in schools. So that would be one example of that community partnership that I think is really important. We've got to start with our youngest learners right from the beginning. I actually did an observation with one of our teachers as he used zones of regulation, social scripts, and some play-based learning all at one. What's expected when someone yanks your toy out of your hand? It's not expected to hit your friend. It's expected to say, hey, that's mine. We need to role play. We need to practice those things with young learners in that play-based learning approach. So looking at preschool, I think it's really important. You'll see that it says for all kids. These are that whole district-wide or whole school-wide approach that we've taken. In kindergarten this year, our teachers really took on second step lessons. They created a scope and sequence for that and how they were going to use that throughout the year. So that way they were all implementing second step lessons throughout the whole district kindergarten classroom to try to build upon that social emotional learning. There's only more initiatives coming into schools and that importance of academic learning, but we know for kids if they don't have solid foundation around social emotional learning, academic learning is going to be that much harder. So again, we're starting with those young populations. I talk about PBIS strategies. Positive behavior intervention supports district-wide is a great example of how we've embraced social emotional learning. At Sunnyside, I'll use the example that Amanda shared. Sunnyside has respect, responsibility, and being safe. They go through universal lessons with those students at least twice a year. What does that look like at recess? What does that look like when you're on the bus? Having really direct lessons to tie into those characteristics. So we are a PBIS district at every level, even up at the high school level. At the middle school, for example, we might talk about Spartan bucks. Students might be earning Spartan bucks in order to shop at the school store. And that's walking around seeing a middle school student being really kind to someone and just recognizing that was kindness. That's exactly what we need to see. I actually talked with a young man at 5th grade camp about that, about being a good friend. And on the very last day, he said, Mrs. Otani, that just really, I can't believe you said that to me. It meant a lot to me. It'll probably change my trajectory. And I wanted to say, buddy, you just changed mine. It's just an awesome moment when kids even recognize that good that you're seeing in them and being really direct about it. Classroom City, I think, is another great example of social emotional learning. They need to learn how to navigate as a little community. They're nominating mayors. Kids are losing, right? Kids are having to deal with money and do that back and forth reciprocity. Those are all really concrete social emotional learning skills. As I go to that other side, it says for some students. We know that some students within our system need even more intensive or maybe more direct instruction around social emotional learning. Zones of regulation would be an example of something that's being used really across the nation, but really heavily here in the Pacific Northwest, because here we talk a lot about positive behavior supports. That's really helping students learn to navigate their feelings. What does it mean when I'm in a green mode and I'm happy? How does my body feel? How does my mind feeling? All the way up to yellow, red, and blue. So talking to kids about their zones of regulation. How are they feeling? And then what can they do when they feel that way? Rather than teaching them it's not the right way to feel. We need to work on helping kids understand how they can deal with that feeling. So zones of regulation is a good example that can go preschool through 12th grade. There's even board games associated to it. It's pretty fun. We do a lot of social scripting for students, and that's role playing. But for some of our students, it might need to look like a book personalized about them, about what it looks like for them on the recess playground. We also do a lot of social thinking materials. Social thinking is definitely research-based evidence strategies, mostly designed for students with specific disabilities around social emotional skills. So as you can see, as you go down the list, tons of material from social thinking. Social detectives would be one example that we might use at upper elementary or middle school, and I'm smiling because one of the characteristics is called rock brain. And I've definitely walked in and the kids have gone, I can't do it, I just have rock brain. Okay, well then how are we going to get back to a flexible brain? That ties right into what we say for all kids at Sunnyside. When we're talking about ACEs or CLEAR training, that's really a training for kids who have experienced adverse childhood experiences. An example of rock brain from ACEs training would be your upstairs and your downstairs brain. When your lid flips and you're in your downstairs brain, you can't get it all together. So we got to get the lid flipped back over so that you can make great decisions. So at our elementary schools, we have some difference as far as what are those more intensive direct instructions that are we, using at the school. CLEAR is just an awesome example at Sunnyside. It's a 3-year program. So upon their 3rd year, they're going to have access to those materials for forever now, once they've completed that training. Kelso's Wheel at Jefferson is another great example. It's how to problem solve out at recess. How are you going to solve the problem? And helping adults train adults to say, hey, first let's go to the wheel so you can talk to me about how you're going to solve this problem, rather than maybe giving the answer or saying go figure it out. Kelso's Wheel has about eight choices of a way a student could problem solve through an issue maybe out at recess. And then the 6th through 12th grade, I have to bring this up because I think so often we're, again, thinking about social emotional. Organization, planning, self-management are crucial skills. So at 6th grade, they run a HOPS program, which is a homework organization planning system, in hopes that HOPS would carry on with students. I've seen that happen. My daughter in 8th grade continues to use the organization system of HOPS. I would love to see us kind of bring that up to multiple grades, but definitely a way to help students keep on track, keep that self-management skill, learning how to navigate 7 periods a day with 7 different teachers. So these are all just a snapshot of what we're doing in schools. This is probably one of our biggest areas of need, though, that I've seen grow as an educator. So for some of us, as our next steps, we'd like to talk about adopting second step curriculum in 1st through 5th grade. We've never formally adopted it as a curriculum for all of our elementary age students. We'd also like to start talking about, and I'm smiling at Bob, maybe a universal screener in social emotional learning. That is definitely a big push in education right now. Let's figure out where kids are so we can match up with them rather than waiting for them to show us maybe where they are in levels of learning or needed learning. Our district has also embedded a lot of professional development through learning improvement days around social emotional learning. We've had a speaker come in the last 2 LID days and talk to upper secondary learners about anxiety in classrooms and what does anxiety look like for students. Tyler McNamara was another great example of social emotional learning, someone to give a testimonial or a story about how they felt as they went through school. We've also taken a big shift in our approach to personnel in schools. Previously, we were always had a counselor / school psych in buildings. So that person generally served 2 roles. We've started to move away from that and put more emphasis into counselors. We still have adequate school psychs to support our students, but again, recognizing we need more time for counselors. So there are several of our elementary schools that have full-time counselor in them. That's a new shift from when I came on to Pullman over 10 years ago. So I think those are great just examples of where we're going. Supposedly, OSPI says that by the end of June 2019, they're going to have taken the 6 main standards around social emotional learning and break it into grade band levels. There's not a lot of hope in that timeline right now because a lot of people can't agree on what that looks like. Well, because we're all people. We're all different in each of our own ways, and we need to be met where we are or with what we need. So there are several kindergartners that I know that might not benefit from play-based learning. They might need some real direct instruction. So I have always been encouraged to look at all of those resources that we have for our students and provide them access to that with where they are. So I know mental health are big words and behavior are big words, but I think overall we're talking about social emotional learning for all. And that really includes adults as well. Some of these things are really hard for adults to teach because they might not have ever had that direct instruction. And that's okay. We're all learning something new every day. We're learning breathing techniques. We're learning mindfulness. Those are all examples of how we can help our students, I think, continue to be successful, but it's going to be a community approach, and we need to all be on the same page for our kids. So, just a brief overview of social, emotional, behavior, mental health in Pullman.
Thank you.
So first, thank you very much for the chart. So I think I had mentioned this previously, but you hear a lot of conversations around social emotional learning. And I think you touched on it. It's like we're all people, and for us it means different things. And so it's really nice to see some kind of concrete things that we're doing because, I mean, I know it's our focus, but like when I go to presentations or whatever, you hear all this stuff. And it's and then it's really hard to be like, well, how does that translate into actual things that we're doing? So I really appreciate the chart too.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Question, Megan, on the second step, is that just in the kindergarten level of all the kindergartens or just at one school?
Currently, it's in every kindergarten
Okay.
throughout the district.
And the cost to implement it at the 1st through 5th grade?
It would all depend on how many kits we really wanted. If we wanted a kit for every classroom versus a kit to share, I think now that we're going to smaller, not just smaller class sizes, but number of classes in buildings, I could see 2 first grade teachers sharing a kit. Another example would be this year, Katie Vandemark at Sunnyside chose 2 grade levels to go in, and she modeled and taught the lessons with the teachers in the room so that they felt more comfortable with that. So it really has to go back to that collaborative effort in the school to say, how are we going to embrace this? So I would say, I think a second step kit costs around $500. It's been a while since I actually looked at the price, but I'd be happy to look at that cost. But I think I'm close.
Yeah, and I'll be coming to you with a request to adopt second step, probably then our next board meeting.
For K through 5?
Yeah.
So would we get enough homework to look at it before you bring it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, and I'll bring it twice.
Okay.
It's like, yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's just one example of curriculum out there, but it's definitely been a really recommended one across the state.
Because I've heard a lot about that, but
And there's components of all that social emotional learning that we were talking about. I know anti-bullying is also a phrase that I think we hear and talk a lot about. There are definitely anti-bullying lessons in there. Again, I think I'd love to see how the district's moving towards that proactive, how do we be kind? How do we be respectful? Rather than how do we not be not kind? I think we have to keep talking with kids about that growth mindset. And students who present some negative behaviors, I believe are all communication. And they're telling us that they need something. There's an unmet need there. Another example of our community partnership is working with our outside providers and Palouse River Counseling. A push from the state has been a program called WISE, which is a wraparound intensive program. I will tell you that we have many, many teachers, myself, people who attend those meetings for our students in evening hours because we know that that's the approach they need with intensive community supports. So that would just be another example of the ways we're trying to support students.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Megan.
All right, up next, we have a report on summer programs presented by Assistant Superintendent Roberta Kramer.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about summer programs. We've been working on this for quite a while. Always seems to be a little bit of a moving target. Just a couple of things are still tentative. So at elementary, we run a program that is funded through Title I and LAP. We target, our target group of students are children that are reading below grade level at the end of third grade. That's a state requirement that we need to meet those needs. It also just is a very significant need that we have. So we're trying to get to those kids early. We invite every single one of them, then base our staffing off of the number that sign up. And the focus on that is all ELA, reading and writing. That's what all of that time. That's about a half a day, and they come for 4 days, three weeks in a row during July and August. We hire teachers for that as well as paraeducators, trying to get to those groups small, really targeted skills-based instruction. And this year we're going to host it at Kamiak. So that's going to be new, and we will provide transportation, including running a bus to Albion. So we want to make sure that all kids have access. At the middle school, this is one of our tentative pieces. What we've done in the past is we've done a middle school math camp for kids that are entering 6th grade. So we're working on the teacher for that right now. But really, again, a targeted group trying to build some confidence over a couple of weeks, just to have some experiences with math. And you can imagine Johnny is quite thrilled with this idea. But we all are, and it just builds their confidence, and that's what when they come into the start of school, having just a little bit of an edge, of a little leg up is helpful to kids that have struggled. So at high school, we're going to a little bit different model than what we have in the past. In the past, they have been online. Now they're coming to class. Okay, teacher and students are facing each other. Okay, it's going to be over 5 weeks. Between July 2nd and August 1st, Tuesday through Thursday, very intense, okay? That's going to be a lot of work for the kiddos and for the staff. And it's based on credit recovery. So we want kids that have been less than successful with gaining the credits that they need. We want to provide them with an opportunity. And our Learning Assistance Program funds allows us to do that. And then we have been, Justin and Cameron and I have been engaged in a conversation around doing some sort of a jump start for some of our 8th to 9th graders. There's some, we can use some of those funds for that transition. We've talked about doing it during the summer or maybe providing some support once school starts. I'd like to have them kind of get started at least coming together a couple of times during the summer, even if they just come together to kind of do some interest inventories, do some more social kind of experiences, and then do some follow-up during the year. We know that we need to have kids on time to graduate at the end of 9th grade. That is such a critical time. And so looking at our data, telling us who is it that we need to really be encouraging to participate, that's really what our work is there. So I'm actually meeting with the 2 of them tomorrow. And then specialized programs. We run a extended school year program in special education for both elementary and secondary students. Usually a half day in that same block of time, July 22nd through August 8th. I know that the elementary will be at Kamiak and the secondary will be at LMS, just like it was last summer. And then for ELL, in the past what we've done is we have run a kind of a welcome before school starts, summer school. We've had mixed results with that. Part of that is some of the kiddos that come don't stay with us. They, so it's during the summer when they're still here, but they haven't left yet, but then they leave and then we're not able to track their progress. We have some children that come that are visiting from another country. So yeah, it gets to be pretty complicated. And so what we've decided to do instead is to really work on developing the skills of our teachers and really using the SIOP model. Isabel is a SIOP trainer and really providing that professional development for a team of teachers. And the reason that we're at Jefferson is that our numbers of students who participate in this program has only increased over the last few years, and next year it will be the highest in our district. And with my guess is that we'll end up with about 75 students there that are identified for this program. So we want to try to be proactive and get to a team of teachers. Right now we have teacher interest from at least one teacher at every grade level at Jefferson, including Nikki Wolf, who is our Core Plus teacher, also Jim Bruce, who will participate. So really trying to build that, and so they'll come in for 2 days this summer, doing the intensive training, and then throughout the year, Isabel will continue to meet with them monthly, but also then provide support in their classrooms with them as they're working to implement this model. So we're very excited about it. It's a very different approach. Once we've worked with the staff at Jefferson, our plan is to then continue to roll it out to the other schools over time. But wanted to try this out at a school that we know our numbers are only increasing. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Yeah.
So for the high school summer program, the credit recovery, is that also going to be offered to the 12th graders that didn't have enough credit to graduate, or is it just 9 through 11?
I don't know that we've spoken specifically about students, but I imagine those students would have access. I can't imagine that we would say no, because we still have an opportunity to provide them support and service. So yeah.
And how many credits would they be able to make up in that?
I think one. I think it'll be between it, and it. Sometimes it depends on the students. Sometimes they can do more than one class at a time. It really is dependent on their interest, their commitment to the process. It's pretty tough.
Is English still the most commonly failed subject?
Oh, I don't know. That's a great question. I can get back to you on that. Yeah. I don't know that, yeah. Mhm.
So that credit recovery is course specific.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, it is course specific. So we'll have teachers that in the core content, so in English, math, social studies, and science. So we'll have teachers that can provide that direct instruction. It's a wonderful opportunity. I don't know if students always look at it, but generally they buy in after they're there and they're having some success. Okay. Any other? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next part of the agenda is the visitors section. This is the part of the agenda for anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or as a member of a group. Visitors addressing the board. Oh, no one is signed in. Were you planning to? Okay, then I'll go ahead and say that. Visitors addressing the board will go to the microphone and state their name and address prior to presenting their information. The board will listen and may offer clarification but will not discuss the topic at this time. The board may consider moving the topic presented to a future meeting date as a discussion item. Please keep your comments civil and respectful and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Individual speakers may not give their time to other speakers. Okay, thank you. Meg, please.
My name is Meg Galnick, and I reside at 1510 Northwest Arcadia Drive. And I wanted to come tonight because I saw on the agenda that you guys were talking about mental health and some of the curriculum and various things that you're providing for the school district. And so I just wanted to emphasize, I'm in the schools a lot, and I would agree with Megan. The last 10 years and really the last 5 years, we've seen just a really huge increase of mental health issues, especially anxiety, behavioral problems, all of those things that come along with that. And so I would really hope that we can make it a priority and do some screening and intervention with that early on. And I know some districts have partnered with DSHS for early screening, and there are some grants out there that you can get for that as well. And so I just see that this is we're not halfway through this. This is just the beginning of the mental health crisis. And so if we can jump 2 steps ahead and do some screening and some intervention and get counselors at every school, psychologists if we can, even partner with a behavioral specialist that can come to the schools. That's not associated with the schools. So if kids need to seek counseling, if they need some sort of rehab for drugs and alcohol, any of those things, that we can provide some of those resources. Because as we know, a lot of these families don't have the resources, or they won't seek out the resources. And so how can we help kids with the graduation rates and just be successful people, right? So I just wanted to bring that up and just to let you know that I think it's a really, really important thing at this point to really focus on that and jump on that as soon as we can. And then the other item is with the boundary changes for the new schools, I'm a little concerned with where we are at with the boundary changes and what families we've let stay at school at various schools. And so I would love to see the demographics of what it is at this point, because heard a lot of Sunnyside families that were supposed to come to Jefferson are, they put in an application to stay at Sunnyside, and they're like, oh, we're staying at Sunnyside. So it's a concern because, Jefferson, we're losing so many students, and we thought we were going to get some of those Sunnyside families, right, to kind of, boost some parent participation in PTAs and parent participation in the classes. And so far, we're not seeing any of that. And so it's a bit of a concern at this point, and it's also, that's beside the point. The bigger concern would be the socioeconomic demographics for each school. And I know that I fought really hard to make sure that that was even Steven for all the schools, for the elementary schools. And so I would like to see the data on that, and so that we can make sure that we are, you know, fairly even. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that one school isn't way off, you know, compared to the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. To expedite business at a board meeting, the board approves the use of a consent agenda, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by a member of the board and voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. Tonight's consent agenda consists of minutes, overnight field trip requests, personnel report, warrants, and transfer requests. And I would now entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to action items. Action items have been previously discussed by the board, and the board will now take action by motion. The first action item this evening is Resolution 19-2002, which is our 2019-2020 WIAA enrollment resolution.
Thank you very much. I was not at the last board meeting, but I know Dr. Kramer covered each of these, so I'll go over it. But again, this is a requirement in order for our participation in sports. So each year, we require that the board approves our membership in the WIAA, and it's pretty straightforward.
Even though I already signed it.
Is that this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I was gonna ask. Signing here.
You can't sign it till you say yes. No.
Unless there's any discussion, I would move that we approve, whatever the policy is, sorry.
Approve
1920, right?
Resolution 1920.
Yeah, Resolution 1920.
02/2019.
Second.
2020.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this resolution. And then, Amanda, I just want to clarify, because you weren't here at the last meeting, you are now becoming, with this resolution, our WIAA rep.
Okay,
So that's,
so this makes it official?
that makes it official as of next
Congratulations.
season. And you will have potentially some things to really think about with this whole thing with the league changing and whatnot. So have fun with that. All right. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, this resolution is approved. Our next action item this evening is the 2019-2020 board meeting schedule.
Again, this was presented at the last meeting, so I don't believe there were any changes. It would remain board meetings second and fourth Wednesdays in each month. November and December differ to accommodate school and holiday schedule. And actually, typically July does as well. Questions?
I move approval of the 2019-2020 board meeting schedule.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2019-2020 board meeting schedule. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
I just have a question. In terms of the retreat, board retreat, would that be included in that schedule, or is that kind of ad hoc?
We include that when and if we have it published and we have a date.
Okay,
But if not, if it's not in the calendar, we publish it.
okay.
We do, I think we do have a date though, correct?
We do it.
That's not for the one in 2020.
Not for 2020.
For the
Yeah.
19 one though.
Yeah.
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 Good.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Final action item, policy 4310, district relationship with law enforcement and other government agencies.
Okay, so, gotta find the right one. So, I know that Dr. Kramer went over this with you at the last meeting. I have made a slight adjustment since the last time you saw this based on feedback. And I'm going to highlight my little cursor here. If you look to the third paragraph, if the district engages with a school resource officer, SRO, district will clarify its relationship with the SRO, including the SRO's purpose, role, supervisory structure, and the limitations on access to student information and written memorandum of understanding with the Pullman Police Department. So we will be working on an MOU. We don't currently have an MOU. So I just wanted to make that clarification for the board.
So would that go in with like the procedure or something? Or would it just be a?
It's typically a resolution in a separate document.
I
So-
understand the Pullman Police Department is about 7 officers short.
They are very short.
Right.
Yes.
So is that kind of contingent upon those positions being filled, or?
Not at this particular time.
Okay.
But it would be nice to have an official MOU so everyone understands their roles and responsibilities.
Sure.
So I've been collecting samples from other districts that currently have MOUs and taking a look at, I'll be working, it's going to be quite a process because this also has to be approved by the Pullman Police Department as well.
Is there a possibility that the Sheriff's Department could assist?
There's always a possibility. Currently, our SRO is being provided by the Pullman Police
Right.
Department.
And I was thinking of the shortage.
Yeah. And some districts use city police officers, some use sheriff.
Okay.
I'm not aware, particularly the Whitman County Sheriff's staffing level.
Yeah.
I know Colfax is really short as well. And I'm not sure about Whitman County Sheriff.
Okay.
They may be in a similar position.
I know they're probably in a position because they're covering Colfax.
I would think so, but I don't want to, I don't know, so I'm theorizing, but
I move approval of the policy 4310, district relationship with law enforcement.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve revisions to policy 4310, district relationship with law enforcement and other government agencies. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, those revisions are approved. Next, we'll move on to our discussion items this evening. Discussion items are presented for the board for discussion. If they need action, they will be brought back at the next meeting. The first discussion item this evening is 2019 summer programs, presented by Executive Director of Operations Joe Thornton.
As an annual requirement, we need to inform our insurance carrier what we're going to be doing extracurricular-wise. So this is different from what Roberta was talking earlier about summer instructional programs. So these are extracurricular programs that coaches, advisors are going to have. And included in the packet for you was a list, everything from LMS, boys and girls basketball camp, to high school basketball for boys and girls, cross-country football, pep band, softball, tennis, summer weights, wrestling, and cheer, ranging different dates throughout the summer. So that's approved by you and then shared with our insurance carrier. Questions?
Is this something that it would be helpful to move it to an action item tonight?
Probably for the simple reason that all these activities can begin next Monday, which is the first day after the end of spring state competition. So it's possible some of the advisors will be doing this starting next week. Hopefully not on Monday because it's a holiday.
Yeah, I move we make it an action item.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we move this item to an action item this evening. Any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, this item is now an action item, and I would entertain a motion. I move to approve
2019 summer programs.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2019 summer programs. Is there any further discussion of this motion? Do the 2019 summer programs, do they, is there an array that meets like Title IX, or is that something that we need to strive to do to offer summer?
That's a great question. I will defer to Dr. Maxwell and Dr. Kramer for some help for that.
Okay.
And remember that these are programs, these are activities that the coaches and advisors are doing on their own. It is essentially outside their contract. You know, the coaches are typically stipend, but if they're a non-certificated employee, they're on a time slip. Well, they're not getting time slip for this stuff in the summertime, but it's stuff that they do because they care about the programs, they care about their kids, they want the kids to be successful. And certainly with something like summer weights, we know that that's a vital thing to provide in an effort to prevent injury later on. So to answer your question, I'm going to defer to the table.
I don't know if we have a specific answer, but I would say since this is optional, not required, but it also would depend on being able to find coaches that could offer and provide it as well. So I don't know the answer, but that's definitely something we could take a look at, finding more information on.
I'm totally in favor of it, of course. I just wanted to raise that as a potential issue to think about if you know. All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the 2019 summer
Thank you.
programs are approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next discussion item this evening is Policy 1810, Annual Goal Setting Process.
Correct. So hopefully you've had time to look this over. I'm going to point out the highlights that were changed or adjusted to the WASD example. So one of the things that we've tried to do with this particular annual goal setting process for the board is streamline the process and also make it very specific. And so work sessions to discuss the goal setting will include, but not limited to, post-conference reflection session after the Washington State School Directors Association annual conference, which is typically in November, and a summer board retreat to analyze student achievement data. So to help with the goal setting process, we thought it'd be very relevant. You typically go to the conference in November. We typically have a discussion about things that occurred or we want to replicate or enhance. And also, we need to be also taking a look at our student data. So this would put in some structure and time elements into this policy. Next is WASDA language regarding goals and objectives that may be included but are not limited to board functions of. Again, added these because they were in our existing or in the in the WASDA language, so they were very good, so included those as well. Then the addition of WASDA language in the following sentence took a little bit of liberty to adjust it just a bit. At the conclusion of each academic year, the board will reflect on the degree to which it has met its goals or objectives. The WASDA online board self-assessment will be performed in alternate years, and the board developmental activities will be aligned with the board goals. So what I put in there was that to make sure, because we've stated that we're going to do that every other year, so this is just putting it into policy. Because we said it, but we really didn't have a placeholder for it. So this seemed like the logical place to add that. Deletion of the last two paragraphs of the current policy. The language was really outdated and does not reflect our current practice at all. And then I added the cross-reference of board policy 1101F, the operating protocol. Excuse me. So those were the adjustments.
Do you want
Questions?
to pull it up, the
Sure.
actual, in case anybody wants to?
In the spirit of the strategic management, strategic planning process that we're going through, I'd like to maybe discuss making a few small changes just to incorporate update or revision, similar to how we were talking about it incorporating back annually into the goals. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you
That's something that would fit into the board retreat. I think it would, and therefore we wouldn't need to specifically change this. We could have that be something that we do in addition to analyzing achievement data at the board retreat.
make it part of the retreat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, this is your goal. So, and in the retreat, you would have the opportunity to review the strategic plan information as well. That's why I added up here, summer board retreat to analyze student achievement data.
Plus it says will include but not be limited to. So we could do.
Okay, fair. No, I don't know, I may have, I'll send you before the next meeting if I have any thoughts.
That's fine.
I may-
Yeah.
Just because my brain's kind of there right now because we're just in the communications
Yeah.
thing. Because I don't know, I just want to make sure that we're continuously kind of recalibrating.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it may make sense to make that official. But I'll definitely let you know before we have to vote on it.
And there may be another policy that might fit in better as well.
Oh, okay.
So I will take a look as well.
Yeah, let me know if, because I'm open to
Mm-hmm.
ideas.
Yeah. And this one's pretty broad because it does say but not be limited to. So. But I wanted to try to clarify that because this one was kind of a major overhaul. So.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, let's move on then to, not much to discuss for the deletion, but Roberta Kramer's presentation of 3240 and 3241.
What I just want to note on 3240 is the reason for the deletion of that policy is that it's all been shifted into 3241 now. Some of that language is obsolete with the change in the law. So that's why that's WASDA's recommendation, as is our attorney's recommendation, is to eliminate that policy. You're good? Okay.
I was expecting you to just jump right in.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Okay, didn't know if you wanted to talk about the strike through. Okay, so now the next one.
I'm getting there.
Two-part.
There we go.
Okay.
Which one would you like me to bring up
Let's
first?
start with the executive summary.
Okay.
So 3241, you knew this was coming. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. At the top, it says policy 3232. That's what happens when your computer keyboard doesn't work. Ryan. Okay, just anyway, they know my frustration. So anyway, we just brought it to you in March, but when I brought it to you, I said it's going to have a complete overhaul. Well, we have the complete overhaul. WASDA's suggestion was to completely strike through the old language and to present the new because there have been so many changes. I think we've talked a lot about what those potential changes would be. So, and I'm going to bring the procedure to you at our next board meeting. The changes start off with the title. One of the pieces that's refreshing in the law change is that there's early and frequent family engagement in the process, and including language, being able to make sure that our families can access it in a language that they typically use. So there is, one of the goals of the change in the law was to increase the amount of time that kids are in class. That really, we need to use other forms of intervention. We need to keep kids in class. We need to really stay focused on that. Meaning that you can't just send a kiddo out, well, if they're being disruptive, you're going to go out in the hallway. A student can go out in the hallway with a teacher. That's not called an exclusion. If the student goes in the hallway with a paraeducator or with no one, or gets sent to the office, if that goes beyond if that goes for an extended period of time, that is a classroom exclusion, because they're essentially being excluded from the learning. We have to provide educational services in short-term, long-term, and expulsions. And we need to engage families in a reentry process. We've had the reentry process has already been in existence, but the provision of the educational services doesn't preclude the need to do the reentry. So we still need to do them all. We need to disaggregate our data, which we have been required to do. That's really why I think that the law changed, was because of the data. And then there have been some changes around timelines for hearing and notice to families and their rights to appeal. I am happy to answer any questions you may have. You know, in your packet, there was a very extensive from WASDA discussion of the change in the policy that's very thorough and well done. But I'm happy to provide any answers to questions you may have.
The provision to provide services, is that something that you think is going to be burdensome, or is that something that we can handle?
I do think that it will be burdensome. That was one of the concerns that school districts had to the changes in the law. And if you remember, there was an extensive hearing process. In fact, they came back after they did some revisions. Yes, I think that at some point it could be burdensome. We've been able to navigate it pretty well this year. I really, give kudos to our principals and teachers and our counseling staff that have really worked to figure that out. One thing that's really clear in the law is that they don't have to have access to the staff members. It doesn't have to be face-to-face, but there could be some other forms of communication. But I do,
because we don't have an alternative school, there's no place,
right.
You know what I mean? And so
yeah, and I can
just
think,
wondering how that fits.
I had moments as a middle school principal when we had some pretty serious things that happened and had several students suspended for, 3, 4, 5 days, some kind of group activities, and that would have been very burdensome at that point if we would have had to do that. And that can happen. That can happen. It's just it's a bad choice that gets made.
So and I know we don't have a choice in this. Mm-hmm. This is all hypothetical, but we really have to do it. But what would that look like? Say, for instance, if there was a group issue and you expelled 10 people, because of some fight or something. Mm-hmm. And, what does that services look like?
At that point, I'd have a conversation with Bob, but I could see us looking at an opportunity to engage with a substitute teacher.
And then just set up a classroom to
or set up, yeah. It would depend on how many days. You have to look at all those pieces, and with the number of days also changes the kind of services that we have to provide.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
But we could, we could make it happen. But we'd have to get very creative. That's what we'll have to be, is very creative in the process. Mm-hmm.
Are we currently offering those
Yes.
interventions?
Yeah.
We are, right?
Yep, we do. Yep, we do now. We've had students come to the district office for some supervised part of their instruction, provided by staff members at the district office or others. So we've done some creative things already.
Back in the classroom.
Yeah,
Sit in Bob's
it's actually fun. Yeah.
Actually, I have taught
Yes.
students this spring in my office or in Megan's office.
Mm-hmm.
It's very individualized to a degree, and the wording in the law is similar, I believe, or substantially the same. And so it's going to take us a while to continue to navigate this, and it's so new.
Well, it's
and we're
really
gonna
on a
continue.
case-by-case basis, too.
It
isn't
really is on a case by case, and it could even be, part of it could be online, it could be in person, it could be at a neutral site. So it really, really depends on the individual circumstances and the individual student.
That's kind of why I was asking, because that boggles my mind a little bit. If you have, say, multiple incidences from 6th to 12th grade of people, you know, a few here, a few there, a few here, a few there, and all of a sudden you have to provide like 8 or 10 additional random class instruction settings.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be surprised if we get to a point where it's, I mean, right now we're able to manage it. Let's just leave it at that. Let's hope that we don't have a, you know, but I mean, kids are kids, and so, you know, I mean, gosh, we love them when they don't make mistakes. We love them when they make mistakes, so we just have to figure out how to work with them. And so we would figure it out. We'd make it work for families and for the students because we want them to be successful. And I remember when I was first started in this business back in 1995 as an administrator, and I remember suspending students for the rest of the semester, maybe in the first week of school. So they had no opportunity to gain any credit that semester. And I'd love to go back to those kids and say, I am so sorry, that was not a good decision. This is a much better decision for kids long term.
And how do they, I mean, I know reporting is mostly up to us as far as like reporting the frequency, but do they audit or come in and observe your, you know, educational alternatives, or I mean, is it completely up to us?
Yeah, it's completely up to us. I would imagine that if they notice some anomalies in our data, that then they may come back and say, you know, what is it that you're doing? I don't recall that it's a part of the comprehensive program review.
We do, we are required, and I saw.
Yeah, we do the reporting.
We have to disaggregate our discipline data each year and report it. Also, the number of suspensions and expulsions are posted publicly.
Yes.
And that's required by law.
Suspensions, expulsions, and exclusions are now published, and we have to disaggregate the data regularly. It used to be that we could look at it, you know, this year's data, we'd look at it maybe in the summer. Well, now they want us to be looking at it regularly, and fortunately, we work with great principals, and they have been doing that all along. I mean, nothing comes as a surprise. Yeah,
and I know,
they know what's out there.
So just in general, the data reporting requirements, you don't think an issue?
I don't anticipate those will be an issue. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a really important thing. I mean, it's a very big deal for us. So.
Well, and it seems like one of those big changes that maybe, I mean, I like the way it's going, you know, but maybe could be better structured, you know, like more support or more, like materials even, or like, hey, we're going to give you a course space for 6th to 10th grade. I mean, I don't know, like something.
It was one of our repeated comments was that there is no money that comes with this change in the law, and there's a significant impact on buildings.
Well, it's probably not coincidental, but we just had a presentation by Megan talking about kindergarten, social and behavioral intervention. And here we are talking about discipline at high school, where there is nothing, no program provided. So there's obviously something missing.
Yep. Yeah, there is definitely.
So what can ESD 101 do for us? Is there any lobbying that we can do, or?
Well, I think that it all starts with our legislators. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that that's where the conversations need to go. And one thing that they have done is they have funded safety centers at all of the ESDs next year. And so right now there's a cooperative for the Spokane County School Districts that they have access to somebody that does threat assessment, works with the districts. We will all have greater access next year. So there are some pieces that are being put into place that are helpful.
Well, I know WASDA, that was my one big takeaway from this was the funding, like the unfunded mandate situation. because-
Yeah, but the emphasis on one area, but not on one, not another. That's
Yeah.
that's tragic.
Yeah.
But I like the direction it goes into trying to get them back into the classroom and emphasizing,
Mhm.
reentry and,
No question about it. It's just that
and that even provides us incentives to get them back in the classroom too, because we
we're
don't
not
really.
forgetting that
Yeah.
group, but we don't have support for it.
Mhm.
We kind of have to Band-Aid it.
Yeah, and that's why we have to be really focused on that, the integration of the social skills instruction with second step at elementary. There are some programs that are available at the high school. It's funny, I met with counselors in psychs last week, and they're like, there's 6, 8, there aren't really recommended materials, so we're just going to keep looking. Because we've got to find those things that every student has access to related to social and emotional, because that's what helps drive this. Positive behavior eliminates the need for these policies.
Is there some way that can be included in the student discipline write-up?
I will take a look. I don't know that.
I guess what I'm trying to say is link it for a precedent. I mean, we need to start connecting the dots here.
Well, and that might be something too, Bob, that we follow up with our attorney on, because I've been working with him on the procedure part for this. So,
Right.
yeah, it's really great. I mean, exactly. We need to make sure these things are connected.
And every district's going through the same process right now, so.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll continue to navigate and refine as this evolves.
Thank you, Roberta.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, the next part of the agenda is informational items. Informational items do not require action or discussion by the board. The items are included in the agenda for the board to review and may be moved to the discussion items section of the board agenda by any board member. Informational items include board procedure updates and non-substantive policy updates. Does anyone want to move any of the information items to a discussion item? Not seeing enthusiasm for that. Okay, so we'll move on to our executive or closed session. If there are no objections, the board will recess into an executive or closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel. How many minutes?
I will say 20,
A 20-minute discussion, all right, and then
maybe less.
no action will be taken by the board, and the meeting will adjourn at the end of the executive session.
Thank you, Meg.